The thing that I've noticed too, especially with women I've worked with and myself, is you can start the process, but you're not going to see changes for up to 3 months. So that's how long kind of your hair growth cycle can be when you're starting to see new growth come in. You may start making changes and it can be delayed before you actually start seeing results. So don't get discouraged.
So I just got back from a birthday trip, Mary. I think you know. I took a week off and I went to Miami because I had a girlfriend who moved there. However, I had the worst timing and I had been sick 2 weeks prior to
Mm,
that, thinking that I was actually going to get over this before Miami because,
yeah.
that's the hope.
Yeah.
um, but I left with a continued sore throat, but I made sure I went to the urgent care beforehand and I got tested for COVID, flu, and strep because I feel like I have like a notorious history for strep. And everything
It's
was
all going
negative, so I felt
around.
really good. I know. Well, something was, and I definitely got it from someone. I'm not going to say who, but uh,
They'll remain nameless.
yes. But that was the worst experience ever because I couldn't like not go out. I couldn't not, celebrate. I couldn't not sleep in. So it was just a burden. I still had fun, but I went on 3 weeks with this damn sore throat and just not feeling great. And so finally this weekend, as I was heading back home, I made a quick trip to my parents and I go see this Chinese massage therapist that is amazing out there every time I go visit.
Mm.
And I was telling her what was going on. And she's just so intuitive. She reads the body really well. She can really tell when like something's going on with me. And I'm telling her my symptoms. And I was like, it's just this continued sore throat. Like I'm getting worried that it could be something more. And she was like, "Okay, I'm going to bring you tonight, a special tea that my family makes." And I was like, super intrigued. I was like, "Okay, I love this stuff."
And all
And
those
she
Chinese
brought
medicine teas are like hardcore.
Oh, yeah, and they work. Oh my god, I freaking love, like, anything Chinese medicine. So, she brings me in these 2 little containers, she brings me one of them. They're both kumquats. One of them is fermented for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
The
Cool.
other is I know. The other is fermented for 3 years, and she tells me to, like, take one of each, just pour hot water over it, do this for a couple days. And apparently, like, in their culture and in Chinese medicine, like, this is what, like, actually cures a sore throat. And I was like, "I am so desperate. Let's give it a go." I swear to you, 2 days after doing this, I woke up this morning for the first time in 3 weeks without a sore throat.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear that you're on the mend.
Yeah, yeah, I really am. But I just thought it was such a cool experience, and again, another testament of like sometimes you can't test something or have science to back something up to really know if it works or not. And who knows? Maybe it was just the whole power of belief. Who knows? I was so desperate to get well.
Yeah. And I think that's a good testimony to using all different types of modalities for healing, whether it's Eastern medicine, Western medicine, there's a place for all of it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Speaking of, that's kind of what I think we wanted to discuss today, moving on to our topic of both hair health and hair loss. I know, Mary, you have more experience in this realm than I do, for better or for worse. But I don't think I've actually heard like your hair journey or hair loss stories. So I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, this is a good topic. We've been wanting to discuss this for a while, and these are on my website some of my most popular posts. And I get a lot of people in my practice, women specifically, that are battling hair loss and hair texture changes. And just briefly, yeah, I'll give you my background and how I really became more savvy about this in an unfortunate way. Is I think it was my mid 30s, so maybe 10 years ago or so. I've always had really thick, long hair, and seemed like almost overnight. My hair started turning really brittle, and there were chunks of it breaking off. Like at the very end, there was like a huge chunk that just like broke off of it. And then I started noticing increased shedding. So we'll talk a little bit about what hair loss looks like for a lot of people. It can be anything from just noticing kind of more clumps falling out, even, which is alarming, For me, it was just noticing more hair shedding in the shower and in my hairbrush. But I really freaked out. And I have had hypothyroidism since right around then in my mid 30s. And we're going to talk about that today, too. That's a major cause and a major cause of hair loss that, with women that I work with specifically who come to me with hypothyroid concerns. But the first thing I did, of course, was run these labs and discovered my thyroid was off. I hadn't tested it in a while. And I was also pretty severely anemic. And I've battled anemia throughout my life, starting when I was a teenager and I went vegetarian. And I just really don't think I have the right physiology for vegetarianism. And I was a vegetarian for a really long time. And at this point, when I was experiencing this, I wasn't, but I'm still prone to anemia even nowadays. So those are two major causes of especially hair changes, like turning brittle, like the condition of your hair. And that's exactly what happened to me. It turned really brittle, started breaking off, and just started increased shedding. So I was really relieved to actually find the cause because then I could do something about it. But it's really traumatic, especially as women, because hair is associated with so many things like beauty and fertility and attractiveness. And so there's this huge cultural stigma, I feel like, for better or worse. But your hair can offer some really valuable clues about your health. And so it's important to really notice if you're noticing any kind of changes there, or thinning, falling out, even subtle changes in your hair, your skin, your nails can give you really valuable clues about what's going on inside.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you think that this was particularly due to having hypothyroidism, or were there other factors involved?
No, it was definitely thyroid and anemia. So I did some blood work and I discovered I was anemic, and anemia means that you have poor oxygen delivery in the body
Mm,
and that you don't have enough iron. So it's an iron deficiency and all of those things. Iron is a really important mineral for hair growth. And poor oxygen delivery, also, you need a lot of oxygen to your scalp for good hair growth. So, two of those things can really wreck your hair. And hypothyroidism causes hair loss too, because hypothyroid, your thyroid is this little gland right here that regulates your metabolism and so many other metabolic processes in your body, like fertility and your weight, your metabolism, your energy, your digestion. So if your thyroid's off, it can have wide impacts across a lot of different metabolic issues in your body. So uh, when
yeah,
your thyroid is down regulated or not, when hypothyroid means your thyroid isn't functioning up to par, then your energy stores are depleted and your body diverts what it normally would use to put energy into, say, like growing your hair, skin, and nails, and it uses that energy just to keep you going, because you don't have the kind of energy to spare for these sort of
yeah.
secondary characteristics that don't keep you alive. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. No, for sure. Yeah, the anemia is a really interesting one. I recently found out that hair growth is one of the most energy demanding tasks that your body has to perform. So,
Yeah.
as you were saying, circulation, good blood flow
Yeah.
is really critical for the delivery of nutrients to help with hair growth. And I actually didn't know that a lot of the hair supplements and products out there, this is actually what they're created to do, is to help with circulation to bring better blood flow.
Yeah.
So I found that fascinating.
Yeah, there are a lot of products out there. We'll talk about that today too. But hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune hypothyroid, those are two of the most common issues to affect women. And I encourage everyone, we'll talk about kind of what tests to use today, to ask your doctor for, to order online. But I think hypothyroidism and hormone changes are the biggest causes I see, especially when you're moving into perimenopause, menopause, low estrogen, low progesterone. So those two. And what are some other causes, do you think?
Um, Definitely stress.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have a personal story with hair loss. However, I went through that with my mother just recently after my dad was diagnosed with cancer. She became the caretaker. And for the next year, we literally saw her go bald, which in itself is unsettling. Already having a sick dad and then having your mother look like the
Oh,
sick partner.
yeah,
Yeah, I
that's
mean, that
like
was hard.
really devastating.
It was, and thankfully her hair is actually now growing back. So she's really, I would say, my experience in terms of the personal hair loss story that I had to see, her journey and her go through and experiment with all these things. But I saw the effects of what stress can do to a person because my mom doesn't have hypothyroid or any thyroid issues. And thankfully, that's the one thing that we don't have in our family. We have many other things, but
Yeah.
that thing, that one doesn't affect us. But yeah, I would say that I think potential deficiencies, I think they're probably more rare. But things like B vitamins and we hear about biotin a lot, which we'll get into in a little bit. But if there are actual deficiencies going on, that can definitely, like anything else, cause and manifest in certain ways in some people. And then specifically autoimmune conditions as well. I mean, really anything can happen with autoimmunity, but when women are experiencing like high androgens, high testosterone, um, this can be one of the ways it can manifest. And I say that because, I am diagnosed with PCOS, but I am not the textbook person that I'm supposed to look or walk like someone with PCOS. I do not have hair loss. I do not have a weight problem. I do not have high insulin, but I still have PCOS, right? And so I think that just because you're labeled as something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get all the symptoms.
Yeah. I mean, and even going back to stress, there's something called telogen effluvium, which means that stress really affects your hair follicle and it can take, and they go into a dormant phase and start shedding. And it can take, stress is so powerful the way it impacts the body. It can take 2 to 3 months for that to show up. And I actually think
Mm.
deficiencies are a really common cause of hair loss, especially iron and ferritin. Low iron and ferritin are a huge, huge cause. But yeah, you're exactly right. The hormones you mentioned, androgens and testosterone in women, those are androgen means male. And those androgenic hormones, if you have too many of them, that can cause hair loss too. So you can see it's all really nuanced and it can be really, it can be really varying depending on what's going on with the individual.
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to say, just in terms of deficiencies, a lot of the times, even if people are consuming what they're supposed to be consuming, that doesn't mean that they're digesting it or absorbing it.
Yeah, that's
So
a good
that's
point.
another, yeah, that's just like something I always want to remind people is just because you're eating what you're supposed to, like is your gut working like it's supposed to actually absorb, digest, break down and get the full benefits of what you need from both supplements and food.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of diet, there are some really specific nutrients I want to talk about for hair growth. So, if you're someone who's experiencing hair loss, you definitely want to make sure you're getting enough zinc is hugely needed to grow hair. Zinc, protein, getting enough protein because you need keratin for hair and protein helps with keratin. You need the B vitamins, iron, fatty acids, and most of these nutrients are found in meat. So it's really hard to get adequate zinc and B vitamins and iron on a vegan diet. Vegetarian diet, it's a little easier, but the most bioavailable nutrients like zinc, B vitamins, protein, and iron, bioavailable means it's easiest for your body to digest. Those are all found in meat and fish.
Yeah. And it's not to say that it's not impossible for someone who's a vegetarian to, address these issues. I think it's just probably going to take longer and you have to be more proactive and there's probably higher maintenance involved.
Yeah, totally. And we both have feelings about vegetarian and vegan diets. I don't think they're particularly sustainable in some people, but you do have to curate your diet and be a little bit more careful about getting nutrients or supplementing where needed if you're going the vegan route and you're struggling with hair loss.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So aside from just the specific nutrients I mentioned, what foods should we include really to support hair growth and prevent hair loss?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned protein, Mary, and for me, I think that's number 1 with hair, skin, nails, like that whole category, but specifically hair. That's just a non-negotiable. Like you really, really need to get protein in your diet, in a sufficient amount. And I hate
Like
talking
30 grams of
numbers.
meat, 30 grams per meal, we're saying now.
We are. I know it's gone up. I would say for women, yes, definitely around there. Obviously, everyone is going to be different, and to calculate that number is going to be very personalized and specific. But that is just an average, I would say, to kind of aim for. And then there are other ways to get protein in your diet if you don't necessarily eat a lot of foods that contain protein. Collagen is something that I really recommend. I've seen a big difference in myself. I think the research and the studies are really strong to support collagen as something that can support hair health, among other things. And it's a really easy way to get extra protein in your diet when, again, maybe it's harder to get through foods. Collagen I love, especially because it's like unflavored, it's easily mixable, and pretty much like anything. You can add it to coffee, you can add it to smoothies, you can add it to oatmeal. Um, I mean, it's kind of soups, like anything that doesn't have a lot of protein, like bam, you got protein in it. Just put some collagen.
Yeah, and I mean, it generally has about like 10 grams per scoop, and I like the hydrolyzed collagen protein because the molecules are easier to absorb. So look for that on the label. But collagen has been a huge game changer for me, for my skin, for my hair, and for my joints, for my like achy knees. So I'm a huge believer, especially as we're aging and our protein needs increase.
Yeah, for sure. The other one I will mention that I really do love as well, instead of, I've kind of gotten away from like the flavored protein powders because I just can't stand them
Yeah,
anymore.
the stevia
Um,
they put in those is nasty.
Yeah, I'm just not a fan. Exactly. But I've been using like bone broth protein, and a few years ago I discovered it and I love it now. I love the taste of it. And it's just so easy to mix into almost anything. And that has a really good amount of protein. I think it's like 25 grams
Yeah.
per serving.
And if you can
Yeah.
tolerate dairy, honestly, whey protein, like a really high quality whey protein from grass fed cows, has an amazing amino acid profile. And amino acids are what you get when protein is broken down. So if you're just getting the raw amino acids, then your body is using that for muscle and tissue repair and hair growth. So I can't tolerate whey. I don't really do well with
Yeah.
dairy in that way,
Yeah.
but I
Same.
love the Designs for Health Way Cool protein. If you use that, if you can tolerate dairy and use the whey with collagen, that's like a real double whammy for your skin and your hair and just to meet your protein needs.
I know. I'm always jealous when people can actually digest whey because I am also not one of those people. And
I
I
know.
also find that it affects my skin. Like I will break out if I eat whey. So unfortunately, I avoid it. But yes, I agree. It's a great nutritional product. Otherwise,
Yeah, same here. It makes me bloated. I mean, no one needs to hear about that. Never mind. You can delete that. I don't really care.
I mean, no,
Yeah.
that's raw and real. Why not?
I don't want to go on a tangent with it. Okay. So yeah, then a couple other supplements to mention. And I should say when we're getting into solutions here by tightening up your diet, one thing I really want to mention is if you are noticing hair loss or changes in the texture of your hair like we've been talking about, like your hair breaking off or getting more brittle, the first thing you want to do is get lab work. And the lab work that I recommend you get just as a CBC, which is a complete blood count, but also make sure that you're getting iron and ferritin, which aren't always included in that. Ferritin is the storage protein for iron, and low ferritin causes changes in your hair. And if it's below, I think like 20, then you could be experiencing problems. You want it to ideally be in the 40 to 80 range or so. So thyroid panel is vitally important with your TSH and your free T3 and free T4. Your T3 is really important. That's your active form of thyroid hormone that will give you clues about your metabolism. And if your T3 is low, that's actually what I monitor on my own lab work the most is if my T3 is low, then everything goes kaput. And I can honestly tell if my thyroid is off now that I've been dealing with it for so long, because the first place I see changes is in my hair.
Mm. And so a lot of the markers that you mentioned, let's be honest, are not covered by insurance. So what would be your recommendation for how people can get these like full panels without, using their savings?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it can be really hard to fight with your doctor to get the markers that you want, especially with if you ask for a full thyroid panel, a lot of doctors will say you don't need that. You just need TSH, which is only one part of the picture for testing your thyroid. And what I recommend is doing these direct to consumer sites like Direct Labs is one. And I have a whole menu that has a comprehensive test on it that I think is great for everyone. It also includes hormones. I should mention too, for women, getting your estrogen and progesterone tested. If you have low estrogen, if you're moving into perimenopause and menopause, like we were talking about earlier, that can cause changes in your hair and hair loss. So Direct Labs is a really good direct to consumer option, meaning you can just create an account, go online, pick your panel, the lab work that you
Mm.
want, take it to a Quest Labs for a blood draw, and then you get your results. And you need to have a professional interpret them. And
Yes.
Everlywell, the kit comes to your house. And that's how I test my thyroid. I do a thyroid panel from there, and you just prick
Mm.
your finger, and they have a number of different tests. You can test everything from your vitamin D levels to your hormones to uh, anything really that you can think of. They have a great selection of test kits there. Do you have any ones that you like
So that
specifically?
Um, no, to be honest, it's been a while. I'll be honest that I've used like direct to consumer anything. I've just been going straight to probably like a LabCorp or something and adding it on. It's easier when you have a PPO rather than an HMO insurance to go to your doctor and say, hey, like these are all the things that I want. At an HMO, I think there's more regulation. They're a little bit more tied down as to what they can actually order for you. So it really depends on your insurance, if the doctor will order, as you were mentioning, and what they will pay for. And I've made this mistake before, so I will warn everyone, if you want to get these additional markers, make sure and talk to your insurance beforehand to make sure that they will actually cover it. And if they don't cover it, how much is the bill expected to be? Because otherwise, these can go into the hundreds and thousands, and that's obviously not something that we want people to do.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, Direct Labs, you can
Yeah.
buy lab work from $99. The panel that I like is 300, but it includes everything. Everlywell is around between 100 and 200 for most of theirs. So, but yes, if you're not going through insurance, always a good idea. But
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
recap for this section into getting to solutions. So, lab work first, get your hormones tested, test for any deficiencies, full thyroid panel, and that will give you clues you need to move forward. And then, of course, working on diet, making sure you're getting adequate protein, minerals, especially, are super important. And we talked about iron and zinc, those are vitally important. And then the supplements. I also want to mention, in addition to the kind of collagen and what we were talking about, there are some really nice supplement options for hair growth on the market. I really like those Ollie hair gummies. They have,
Do
uh,
you? I'm actually surprised to hear that.
yeah, they actually work
Is
really well for me. It has like zinc
Yeah.
and it has some keratin and some other herbs in it that are really good for hair growth. It's worked great for me. I mean, it's a really
Hmm.
simple $11 supplement. Designs for Health has one called HSN Radiance that I really like. So the things that you're looking for in a lot of these are going to be like silica, sometimes horsetail, keratin, amla, AMLA is one. Bamboo leaf also works really well. So silica is again another mineral that's really excellent for hair growth. And you'll see biotin. We talked about biotin earlier. And you'll see that in a bunch of them, but that may not always work, you know?
Yeah, biotin, it's funny you mentioned that because I was actually recently quoted in Vogue talking about biotin, the biotin hype, and why it either is or isn't good for us. And what they found, or at least the research I've done, is what they found is that for those who like are truly deficient, it actually is really great and
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
see benefits. But for those who aren't, it's not really going to do much for you. So taking extra biotin when you're already meeting the requirement that you need for hair growth is just kind of a waste of money.
Totally.
The other thing yeah, right. And I think the other thing too is people who love consuming raw eggs. You may not know this, but if you consume raw egg whites, that actually causes a biotin deficiency. So
Yeah.
it binds to the biotin. So just know that you want to cook your eggs. And if you are eating raw eggs, you might want to just switch to the yolk and not the white.
Yeah, that I'd forgotten about that. That is a good tidbit to remember. But yeah, just the like you'll see biotin on almost every hair growth supplement. And like you said, it doesn't work unless you're deficient. And the deficiency is actually quite
Yeah.
rare, right?
It is. It is very rare. I think it's adults need like 30 micrograms of biotin daily to reach like an adequate intake. But the average American diet provides 35 to 70. So we're reaching that well over. So I would just encourage people to focus on foods that have biotin in them. So things like eggs and dark leafy greens, fish, avocados, sweet potatoes, legumes, nuts and seeds are really great sources of biotin. So you don't necessarily need to supplement it, especially if you're already meeting that requirement.
Yeah, and speaking of supplements, we always want to take a food first stance, right? So getting a lot of these superfoods in your diet, and especially omega-3 fatty rich acid foods, I should have mentioned like salmon and sardines and walnuts and chia seeds. You need that essential fatty acids, those omega-3s too, for shiny hair. But honestly, if you are at a place where your hair is falling out or you're seeing hair texture changes, aside from testing to see what's going on, you're going to probably, most certainly, I should say, need supplementation to help bring you back to your baseline, where then you can just kind of maintain your results with diet. But you need to figure out what your underlying cause is. And a lot of these supplements that we're
Yes.
mentioning help bridge the gap. And the thing that I've noticed too, especially with women I've worked with and myself, is you can start the process, but you're not going to see changes for up to 3 months. So that's how long kind of your hair growth cycle can be. When you're starting to see new growth come in, you may start making changes and it can be delayed before you actually start seeing results. So don't get discouraged. And this is why it helps to really work with someone who can help design a protocol for you based on what, might be going on, like deficiencies or finding some loopholes in your diet or trying to address stress. But you got to keep with it because it takes several weeks to months to see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, yeah, well said. The other thing that I know my mom did that really helped with her is she was using rosemary oil on her
Oh
hair.
yeah. Yeah. That's great
And
for scalp health. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's what they say. So that's what she was doing. And I was, just the dietitian in me was doing research on this because I'm always like, Mom, does that really work? And I will say there's not a ton of research behind it, but almost every person I've talked to that have had hair loss issues and uses it has said that it's worked really well for them. So I think observationally in these cases, it seems to be really promising. So I wouldn't, write that out.
Oh yeah.
And it's so simple and it's so cheap. It's accessible to most people. So that's definitely something, from what she's also told me, she doesn't like to wash her hair often because then obviously more comes out. So if you're actively losing hair, that's probably something that you want to avoid, like maybe only wash it once a week, if that. Just depending on also how much you actually have. She was at a point where she went completely bald. So like it was
Yeah.
aggressive with her. Yeah.
Well, with scalp health too, I mean, there are a lot of hair products. We can talk about products too, but there's a lot of products with rosemary in them. But something that I did that I think
Mhm.
is also really useful is when you get out of the shower, flip your head upside down, like between your knees, and give yourself like a good scalp
Mhm.
massage. And you can use rosemary or some of these essential oils for scalp health. But you want to get like that oxygen, that blood flow going. And it feels good, and it actually like it can stimulate your kind of your follicles in there. And that's just what I do is. And sometimes you can get like one of those little
Scalp massagers.
yes.
Or like the
Yeah,
shampoo things, I
yeah,
love
yeah.
them.
But if you turn your head upside down, the blood increases blood flow to your scalp. And so that's what you want in addition to just like stimulating it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there's products too that like really popular products that help to stimulate that's similar, like circulation and blood flow too. I know that like low level therapy can help with that. Also minoxidil, which I believe is Rogaine. Any products that have minoxidil in it. I mean, that's more of like I wouldn't say it's you need a prescription or anything. There's over the counter products, but it can be really helpful for people who actually like have bald spots or are going bald.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, hair loss comes in a lot of different forms, right? I mean, there can be so
Yeah.
extreme, like you mentioned with your mom. And there are solutions where you can use extensions or even wigs while you're working on regrowing your hair. Cause it can feel, I mean, I've been through it and obviously not that extreme, but it feels really devastating and it affects your self esteem hugely.
Yeah, absolutely. There was another product, I don't know if you're familiar with it, Mary, that is really popular now. It's called Nutrafol. That's out in the market, and I believe it's a subscription supplement, but it's targeted for hair loss. And it was recently in the media because it has high levels of vitamin A, of
Yeah.
biotin,
Yeah.
and ashwagandha for affecting liver health.
Yeah.
So I just want to like also caution there that a lot of these supplements will have high levels of vitamins and minerals and herbs, super high, almost toxic high, and they can affect liver health. So just be really careful on what you're choosing.
Agreed. Yeah, I looked at the ingredients of Nutrafol. I've not recommended it personally. There was one case of a woman having liver damage from it. And in that case it could be that she was also taking other herbs, you never know.
True.
Uh but I think that's a really wise cautionary tale is to be careful. That's why taking a lot of this stuff without working with someone or figuring out exactly what you need
Yes.
personally is it can not only be a waste of money, but it can be harmful to your health.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember my mom telling me that one of the side effects that she got on it, which is why she stopped, was started getting like face and body hair.
Oh, wow.
Like yeah, so it's not just hair growth. It can like cause hair growth anywhere. I'm sorry,
Everywhere.
it's just not just head growth. It's body
Wow.
hair growth too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of products too, so we talked about a few supplements, and if you want to just keep it simple, I would start with even like a silica or bamboo leaf tea. So I keep saying bamboo leaf tea because it's a rich source of silica. So even just increasing your protein with collagen, doing some bamboo leaf tea, which is really rich in silica, that's a very conservative approach to get started while you're also, again, working on your underlying cause. But yeah, for a long time, and I have many, many blog posts on my website about this and kind of my natural hair journey about how I tried to clean up all the conventional hair products that I was using. But honestly, there are a couple that I'll call out that are not by any means natural, but really helped me. And one of them is called K18, which is this molecular hair mask that you apply after the shower and it strengthens the bonds in your hair. It's really like done wonders for my hair. And there's another called Olaplex that's really useful for brittle hair. But both of those were big game changers for me. And they don't contain any protein. Sometimes some of these shampoos or conditioners that have a lot of protein in it can cause hair breakage. So have to be aware of that. But they're both hair masks that you apply that actually go in and repair the bond damage in your hair strands. And I found both of those, along with all the other stuff that I was doing, to
Mm.
really be a game changer.
Yeah, there's actually a product I really love, from Olaplex. It's number 9. It's a heat protectant,
Oh yeah, I
but
like
it's
the
also
number
a bond.
9.
It's
It's a serum.
amazing.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a heat protectant. And so like when I mean, obviously not necessarily for hair loss, but it's really important for dry, damaged, brittle hair that you're using heat protectants and the right protectants. If you're not just always like letting your hair dry naturally, which who does that nowadays?
I
Um,
do.
so oh,
I don't know.
just kidding.
I can't blow
Sorry,
dry
I'm a
my hair.
curly girl. I can't do that.
My hair looks like I stuck my finger in a socket if I try to use a hair dryer on it. I've never been able to do that. I always just let it air dry, which
Oh,
is annoying, but I wish I could give myself a
wow.
shiny, beautiful blowout at will. But the
Oh,
only times I do
man.
that are when I go get my hair cut and I get a blowout in the salon. So poor me.
Get yourself a Dyson. I promise you'll be able to do blowout for yourself. It's pretty awesome.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
maybe I just need to
Yeah.
use like a different product
Different product, but
or a
also,
styling product, I should say,
yeah,
styling
yeah, yeah,
tool.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're just so easy now. They're making it like I think the Shark has a knockoff too, but they're just making it so easy to style your hair quickly in the morning. And since cutting mine, it's
Yeah.
it's been an every morning process of styling.
I'll look into that. And I should say
Yeah.
too, we would be remiss in not mentioning that harsh chemical treatments can also affect your hair health and cause hair loss, and especially heat treatments. So my hair
Yeah.
tends to be really dry and I've had to baby it a lot. I only wash it once a week. And then in between washings with shampoo, I do what's called a co-wash, where I just wash my hair, but I use conditioner only. And so it's called a co-wash for conditioner wash. But it's you're
Mm.
massaging the conditioner into your hair and then rinsing it out like you would shampoo, but it's just conditioner. So washing my hair once every 7 days with a co-wash in between, because the conditioner, the molecules in the conditioner trap dirt and you're massaging your scalp, but it's conditioning your hair, but it's not necessarily using like harsh cleaning from shampoos that have sulfates and other products in them that can be really drying and damaging. So watch your treatments. There's a lot of chemical treatments or hair straightening treatments that can cause breakage and damage. And if you have really delicate hair, watch the heat styling. Make sure you use heat protectant. And if you're
Yep.
doing like a curling iron or a blow dryer, make sure that you're spraying on like that Olaplex number 9, or Bumble and Bumble has a great heat protectant spray. So some of these products can go a long way to help protect your hair from styling and heat damage for sure.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just, go out on a limb here and say if you're having active hair loss, it's probably not even a great idea to mess with heat, and just
Yeah,
really focus on the treatment. Yeah.
no, totally. And like I said, I can't blow dry my hair at all, really, because I lack the skills to make it look nice. But but even so, when I was going
Mm.
through this and restructuring and rebuilding my hair, which by the way took a long time, and that's why I say it can
Yeah.
feel really defeating because the results can feel like you're doing all of the work and the results just aren't showing up the way
Yeah.
you want. But it takes a while to kind of correct some of these underlying deficiencies, and then so you're working simultaneously inside of your body to restore health, and then you're doing the outside too. So maybe you're babying your hair or changing up your products a little bit or changing up your styling routine. So all of these things have to be accounted for when you're in the middle of this process.
Yeah, 100%. I have a question for you, Mary,
Yeah.
because I have an old friend who reached out to me when we told everyone we were going to do an episode on hair health, and she had let me know that she'd recently had her thyroid removed and that she is having hair loss, current hair loss, has been having hair loss since. So, in the beginning of the show, we talked about obviously hypothyroidism being a potential cause, but it's not even, that it's that she doesn't even have a thyroid. So at that point, I wanted to ask you, what would you recommend or what do you think is happening that she's having hair loss issues without a thyroid?
Yeah, when your thyroid is removed, the main factor that you want to focus on is making sure that so you're going to have to be taking thyroid hormone replacement for the rest of your life. And so that's usually a combination of synthetic T4, which would be like a Synthroid, or a levothyroxine. So here's the thing: when you get your thyroid removed, you just get whatever the doctor recommends for you as a dosage. And then often you're just sent on your way, and you need to retest and make sure your levels are okay. So some people need a combination T3, T4, which you can get through usually more integrative doctors. And I take a combination T3, T4, and T3 is liothyronine, T4 is levothyroxine. So without getting too in depth here, because we're going to do a thyroid health episode, the bottom line answer here is make sure your T3 and T4 levels are in an optimal range. And that's another
Mm,
thing to consider, is that there's a very narrow optimal range on lab work and there's a very large reference range. And if you're anywhere in the reference range, you might be sent home saying, "Oh, you're fine," but you may be outside of the optimal range. So the
mm.
answer is to make sure retest your thyroid, test it frequently. If you're feeling great, if nothing's happening, every 6 months is fine. But if you're needing to adjust your dosage, and make sure you're testing your T3, because people without a thyroid are going to need T3 and T4 support. So a lot of doctors don't prescribe T3, T4. They just give you T4, and that's often not enough. So that could be a major cause. If you're low T3, then that's one of the first causes of thyroid hair loss, is having that low T3 hormone.
Wow, that's so helpful. And so I'm assuming like animal glandulars, like thyroid glandulars, wouldn't be sufficient. They would have to actually be on medication.
Well, that's another kind of total rabbit hole. Is there are a lot of problems with desiccated thyroid hormone replacement that comes from pigs, because humans aren't pigs, and we don't have the same the same ratio requirements for T3, T4. So there's one called Armor Thyroid that actually is pretty standard and pretty good. But a lot of these others, like Nature Thyroid and WP Thyroid, have been recalled or completely taken off the market because of dosing issues, where they're super potent 1 month and they've sent people to the ER with like massive heart palpitations for being overstimulated. And then there are some that underperform. So there's no consistency batch to batch, is what I'm saying. So just be careful with desiccated thyroid hormone replacements. That's why, it's really important to work with someone to help you with this stuff.
Yeah. And I would assume, given your history with this, you would recommend like a naturopathic doctor, probably a little bit more knowledgeable in the integrative sense.
Yeah. And a naturopath or just an integrative MD who.
MD. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I work with a naturopath who made me a custom prescription from a compounding pharmacy for T3, T4 hormone. And that made a huge difference for my hair health. So we're not just rambling on about thyroid hormone here, but when I finally got the thyroid hormone support I needed, that's when I immediately saw that, and correcting the iron deficiency, immediately saw a turnaround. So, yeah, you can work with an integrative MD or a naturopath, or there are a lot of conventional doctors out there that can also help you with this. You just have to find the right fit.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is awesome information. So helpful. Mary obviously is an expert with thyroid. I am not. So thanks so much, Mary. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I think hopefully a lot of people will find it helpful. But we probably should wrap up, because I know we're going a little over time.
Well, I did want to end on one thing. Do you have because you've always had such beautiful hair, is there any specific product or anything that you like or recommend that you think is kind of a game changer?
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for saying that. I've had a love-hate relationship with my hair for a long time.
I hear that.
Honestly, I think I'm really blessed with genes. My dad has really thick, curly, just voluminous hair, and I think most of his daughters got that. My hair is naturally curly. I did straighten it today. But I honestly don't think there's been one thing. I just swear by lots and lots of moisturizer and conditioner.
Oh yeah.
It's a must. So I mean, people probably, if they would ever see the amount of conditioner I use in one sitting, it's like 2 handfuls.
Yeah,
but
totally.
it's also depending on the length of my hair, right? Like it obviously was more than it is now. But it's just a really quality, rich conditioner can make all the difference. Like, do not skimp on like a high quality conditioner. That would probably be my one thing.
Oh yeah. And I love just adding like a drop or two of oil, like Kerastase kind of hair oil, or there's a number of different oils that have these nutrients in them, and different serums that make your hair shiny and can also make it healthier. So don't underestimate the power of products.
Yeah, 100%. Heat protectant and oil, you're good.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. All right.
Okay. Well, thanks for that tip, Carla, and hope everybody got some good nuggets of information. There's so much to say about this. I think we're going to do a 2-part series and talk about hair health in more detail in the next segment. Also dovetailing into non-toxic hair treatments as well. So please leave us a review. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments also.